Hello and welcome to this edition of Wineskins. I'm Father Jim Cordo. Wineskins is a program that features reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with a variety of issues and topics, all from a Catholic perspective. Wineskins is brought to you through the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our program today, I will interview Sister Jane Marie Kudlotz and Matt Abramowski from the Villa Maria Educational and Spirituality Center. We will also hear more information on the life and times of St. Anselm, and today, as the Church celebrates Easter Sunday of the Resurrection of the Lord, we will get a deeper insight into those particular Sunday readings. That and more on Wineskins. Joining me now is Father Dan Rogich, who is the pastor of Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church in Canton, Ohio. Father Dan, it's great to have you back on Wineskins.
It's great to be here, Father James. Thank you.
Christos aneste ek nekron. We give praise to the Lord for his resurrection. Did I say that right?
You did it perfectly well. Wow.
Wonderful.
It was great.
I remember in the seminary, for some reason, I was still in school. It was either before or after, and I don't remember if Orthodox Easter was before our Easter or after Easter that time, but a group of us went to the Orthodox Church for their Holy Saturday Vigil, and it was a beautiful experience, but I remember them chanting that, and it stuck in my mind, and I've always remembered that so many years ago.
Yeah, Christos aneste. You know, when I guess Mary Magdalene came and they said, I'm looking for him, you must be the gardener. He said, he's not here. He says, Christos aneste, he has risen. So that became a kind of a catchword for the Orthodox. So they sing that song, Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life. Christos anesti ek nekron thanaton patisas, ketis entimimasis zoin harisamenos. And it has this sense of not just a past historical event, but it is in the present participle, the verbs. And so when people, as you visited that church, these people had a sense that the resurrection is right here.
Exactly.
And you know, in the Catholic tradition, the Orthodox tradition, East and West, we try to recreate the life of the Lord in our services, but we try to make them, in a sense, the way our fathers wanted us to make that constantly current and present.
And what it does is it kind of keeps the Lord alive and present in us. It's not just some fact of history, but it's something that is always with us, always present. And unless we keep that idea of the present among us, then we kind of tend to sway different ways, and it's not always good for us. When we talk about the East and the West, and you use the image, or we brought up the image about the two lungs, and humankind have two lungs, and we breathe with both of those if we are healthy. Why is it important for us as church to remember that there are two lungs that we breathe out of as Christians?
Yes, you know, Father, it's a great concept and great question and great, of course, commentary. When we're not full, we're not Catholic, we're not universal, and when we're not correct in our doctrine, when we don't have each other, or we don't have the unity of the church, we don't have a fullness. It's almost as if you're a baseball player that, you have to hobble down to first base. We need each other. We should thirst for one another. Jesus prayed that we be one. And Apostle Paul says we are one as Christ in the church, the image of in marriage. And so our church has to have, this complementarity. And we are different. East and West are different. But differences shouldn't be paramount to unity and to love. And love is the only way that we overcome our divisions. Today, more than ever, in a kind of a world that not only is devoid of love sometimes, but particularly when religious extremism and when we combat one another, we have a tendency to look at our differences rather than the shared history, particularly, let's say, with the Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, of over 1,000 years of having the same sacraments, the same apostolic succession, the same Eucharist, the same baptism, the same faith.
We know that our Pope and our Metropolitan have dialogued and met on many occasions. What would be their hope for us as we kind of look down to the future as people of faith?
Yeah, it's so evident, Pope Francis, and as well as Benedict XVI, but currently Pope Francis and Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople. We know that their history is that the Petrine ministry that came through Rome, as well as the Andrew ministry that came through Constantinople, Andrew is called the first called. He called Peter. These two brothers were martyrs for the Lord. Peter being martyred upside down, and Andrew in the form of an X were the first letter for Christ. And these two hierarchs today, Pope Francis as well as Patriarch Bartholomew, they have visited one another on numerous occasions, more than any two since before the schism in 1054. They have had liturgy and Mass with one another. They have visited one another. They've gone to the Middle East with one another, to Rome, to Constantinople, Jerusalem. They are images for us. I know Pope Francis thirsts for that unity, and so it's brotherly in unity, and it's an image for all Christians to work out our differences, but to concentrate first and foremost on our Lord Jesus Christ. Concentrate on the Eucharist, to adore the Eucharist, to kind of partake in that unity that's found in that common baptism. That's how I see those two. That's what they're doing. I mean, it's not my interpretation. It's actually what they're doing.
You know, as you were talking, the image immediately came to mind that Peter and Andrew were brothers. Mm-hmm. And also Jesus was their brother, and they were his brothers. And so there's that whole sense of this brotherhood and sisterhood that we celebrate together, not only as Orthodox and Catholics, but as all Christians. Mm-hmm. There's that whole sense that there's this Christ who unites all of us. And obviously the call for Christian unity. How and why is it important for us as Orthodox and Catholics to be more determined, for lack of a better word, to be respectful and to strive for that unity as we continue to walk in the footsteps of Jesus?
Well, we need unity for missions first and foremost. We are missionizing in many places side by side. We need unity to proclaim, of course, justice throughout the world. We need unity to proclaim that we are one faith in dialogue and in response to other faiths, non-Christian faiths, but also to extremism, to the many currents that threaten the very fabric of our existence. We need unity to also state in a more powerful way that there is more than just simply what can be offered by the scientific world, anything politically in this world that will say that there's another citizenship. There's a citizenship in paradise. It's not just simply the more, the better. It is that we will find deeper and more qualitative ways to respond to all the isms and all the difficulties of this world. For Orthodox and Catholics, the unity of the Church should be so paramount that we'll be able to kind of also speak to our other Christians. I know that Pope Francis in 2016, not long ago, that he also celebrated the life of Martin Luther. And he went to some of the Scandinavian countries and he hailed and praised him in a sense, him being a good Catholic at the time, for bringing the centrality of the Scriptures back to the Church. And so here we have this call from the Pope to bring back and to kind of re-understand our ways, as he said, that they may hopefully share their cup together as well. And so it's not just simply an academic or a theological type of unity. It's a unity that will go down to the core of our very being, because there's so many people today, particularly young generations, that are not part of the Church. And it can't help but when we heal and when we strive for unity, that God blesses us, that God will kind of bring people back into the fold, and maybe our churches, as we, you and I, off at our youth, how powerful the Church was. And really, it's the Church that we need to kind of preach these days. As much as we preach Jesus Christ and His mother and the saints and the sacraments, the Church is an object of faith. As it says in the Creed, we believe in one holy, Catholic, and Apostolic Church. That's the fullness of the Church, fullness of the Catholic faith, fullness of Orthodox truth in one. And when we can do that, we hope and pray that that unity will spark us and inspire us and the whole world to see how powerful Christianity really can be.
Well, Father Dan Rogich, it was wonderful to have you back on Wineskins, and Easter blessings to you and your flock and to your family.
Thank you very much, Father.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Corda. St. Anselm was the Archbishop of Canterbury. To tell us more is Brother Dominic Calabro. He is from the Society of St. Paul in Canfield and the production assistant at CTNY.
St. Anselm, a Benedict monk who became a bishop, was declared a doctor of the Church in 1712 and has been called the father of scholasticism. Born in Italy, he first entered the Benedictine monastery, but under pressure from his father, he had to lead the monastic life. After an unsettled period, the young Anselm fled to France and entered the monastery there, where he eventually became abbot and gained renown as a preacher and reformer of the monastic life. During this period, he wrote his best theological works, which exerted a powerful influence and established him as theological master in the late Middle Ages. Eventually, he became Archbishop of Canterbury in England and was involved in a struggle over lay investiture with King William, who refused to recognize Pope Urban II. Twice Anselm went into exile, but finally he was able to return to his see, where he died on April 21st, 1109. The opening prayer of the Mass presents the characteristic traits of the spirituality of St. Anselm: to study and teach the sublime truths of revelation. His definition of theology was faith seeking understanding. He contributed greatly to the development of systematic theology, but always with an emphasis on the contemplative and spiritual dimensions. St. Anselm's theological heritage became the patrimony of scholasticism. We should note the primacy that Anselm gives to wisdom in the study and teaching of theology, which is the point of greatest convergence between St. Anselm and St. Thomas Aquinas. Today we should strive for a deeper understanding of our faith so that we may love the truth we have studied as it is stated in the opening prayer. Let your gift of faith come to the aid of our understanding and open our hearts to your truth. The famous axiom, "I believe in order that I may understand," reminds us that we should be guided by the light of faith and not by the light of reason alone. Otherwise, if we rely too much on human knowledge, there is a danger of weakening our faith. Father, you called St. Anselm to study and teach the sublime truths you have revealed. Let your gift of faith come to the aid of our understanding and open our hearts to your truth. For Wineskins, I'm Brother Dominic Calabro.
Welcome back to Spotlight. We're focusing on the Villa Maria Education and Spirituality Center. You know, in one of our segments, we talked about retreats. One of the big retreats, I think, that go on probably at the Villa is confirmation. Can you briefly talk about that, Matt?
We do a number of confirmation preparation retreats for young people getting ready for the sacrament. And to go back to something we were talking about earlier, it's one way we try to work with the kids and get them to embrace their faith and embrace being part of the church and not see confirmation as graduation, but as initiation. And one of the activities we do with them, many who probably feel spiritual but not religious, is we invite them to build a church. We talk to them about what the church is, and then we try to see what excites them about the church. And often the DREs or youth ministers, they want to take those posters with them because it gives them an insight on here's what's standing out to young people, here's what's drawing them in, here's what's attracting them. And then it gives something that they can take back to their parish and build on with these young people to keep them connected once they've celebrated the sacrament.
One thing we really didn't talk about, we talked about the environment, but what about the facilities themselves? We know you have lots of buildings on the property. What are some of the different aspects, and what could people expect when they come there?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of land that is part of our Mother House property, and obviously the largest building is the community center, which is the sisters' home. But also there's a number of meeting rooms that we have in that building, and one of them is our conference center that is fairly new, a new facility and a wonderful, technologically updated, and a place where groups can meet. As far as people coming to stay or guests coming to stay overnight, we have Potier Hall. All of our facilities are named after founders of the Sisters of the Humility of Mary. So Potier Hall is our newest facility, about 3 years old, and that has 41 bedrooms that are a bedroom with a private bath, and the whole building is climate controlled, so it's air conditioned. So that facility is always available for groups or for individual guests. We have a second building, Bejel Hall, which has...
It has 53 rooms that have 2 twin beds and use communal baths, so more dorm style, and 19 rooms that have a private bath, so 72 rooms total in the building.
And most of our youth groups will tend to use that facility because they will tend to double up. So it's a wonderful facility, and there's several meeting rooms in either one of those buildings. We have an activities building that is a gym facility for adults and for young people. The sisters have a swimming pool which is open to our guests, so all guests are able to use that as well. We have a wonderful woods with a pavilion, can have bonfires out there.
There's an outdoor labyrinth that folks can walk. There's an art house. Villa has a working farm still, and so people can spend time out there. In the nice weather, there's many benches and rocking chairs so that you can just sit on the grounds. There's streams that wind through different parts of the property.
Let's talk about a few more of those things, but before we do that, let's give the phone number and website so folks that are with us that really want to contact you, if they haven't had an opportunity to do so or through their parish, what do they do?
If they want to call, because we're in Pennsylvania, the area code is 724, and the phone number is 964-8886. And our website is the abbreviation of Villa Maria Education and Spirituality Center. So it's www.vmesc.org. And we list all of our programs that we sponsor on our website.
And Matt just said, we're in Pennsylvania, and sometimes people think we're miles and miles and miles away, and we are not miles. And we're 10 miles outside of Youngstown, 1 mile over the border into PA. So we're very, very close. Sometimes a lot closer than a lot of other facilities in the area.
And I would imagine with the amount of things that are going on at the Villa, you have a support staff besides the sisters. So who's involved and what do they do, and how are they supportive to your charism and to the center itself?
Well, on our staff, we do have a number of sisters who are committed to helping with our hospitality, helping present some of our programs. So those sisters are committed totally to the work at the center. We obviously have our office staff, which does an awful lot in terms of organizing and setting up and doing a lot of the programming. And so we have 2 people that are in registration. We have 2 people in finance. We have people that have to take care of getting ready to set up the bedrooms and those kinds of things.
And then we plug into the Villa has a maintenance staff and a cleaning staff and a food service, so we rely on all of those folks to help with everything we do with retreats. And the other thing I'd mention too that is becoming a big need for us, especially as more people come, is we're always happy to have people volunteer to assist us with hospitality and welcoming folks. And it's a way that they may spend some time at the Villa, maybe attend a program, and also provide a critical service, which is the Ministry of Hospitality.
And also out there, we know that the Villa apartments are there.
That's correct.
Some of our priests, as you had mentioned, Father Blasco, are there at the facility. You also have the hospice, I believe, is also there.
They have an office in the community center.
So there's that whole sense of working with the community, with the diocese, with the larger group of people to kind of share in that charism, but also to share in the ministry of education, of spirituality, of who we are primarily as people of God. Let's give the number and the website again to the folks that are with us.
Phone number is 724-964-8886, and the website is www.vmesc.org.
Matt Abramowski, Sister Jane Marie Kudlatz, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
It's always
Thank you.
wonderful to hear the great things that are going on at the Villa and the center itself. Please know of our support and our prayers for your ministry.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us.
We appreciate it.
And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you. For more pertinent information and to listen to Wineskins, visit www.doi.org. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Hello, I am Bishop George Murray of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. During this holy season of Easter, we recall the presence of the risen Lord among us. Over 2,000 years ago, he told his disciples, "Remember, I am with you always, even to the end of time." As we celebrate his resurrection, may his gifts of love and joy fill your hearts and homes this Easter season.
Americans have descended into poverty. And as their futures fall, so does our nation's.
Our song today is from the CD called He's Alive. It is by Psalm 150 Productions. As we celebrate this Easter Sunday of the resurrection of the Lord, we will hear more about the sacred scriptures by Father Sean Conaboy. He is pastor of Christ the Good Shepherd Church in Camel.
Director George Lucas of Star Wars fame does not give many directions. His comments to the actors are usually faster, more intense, but most of the time he is silent. I have seen interviews where the actors described that George's style was difficult for them. They couldn't read his face, and they thought that his silence was disapproving. They eventually learned that his silence meant that he was satisfied. He didn't offer affirmations, which is a problem for them, but he was silent because he didn't need to give them any direction. That is, unless he wanted a performance that was then faster or more intense. While directing, he is in his mind so deeply because he is creating an imaginary world, in fact, a whole galaxy in history. He sees in his mind what he would like, but it is not real until the actors and animators make it real. Their performance, their work, makes it real. If he is silent, then they are doing what he sees in his mind. He is watching it play out. Again, they are making it real. Jesus is risen from the dead. Jesus is risen. There is no reference for this, no historical precedent, no philosophical or theological preparation for the resurrection. There is no myth or legend that prepared the world for it. In the Creed, we say Jesus rose according to the Scriptures, but even in this case, it is not according to a specific prophecy, but the fulfillment of the collective message of the Old Testament. Resurrection according to the Scriptures means a fulfillment that was not even anticipated in those divine texts, but without which they couldn't have been fulfilled. And since the resurrection, nothing like it has happened. There is no worldly reference point for the resurrection. Yet the resurrection is the center of our faith, the central message of our faith. And so it is known outside of normal experience. The first disciples believed because of their encounter with the risen Jesus, as we hear in the readings today. We believe because of an encounter with the risen Jesus, even if we find it difficult to articulate our experience. But if we are going to grow in faith and spread the faith, which is the mission of a disciple, the mission of the church, then we need to be more open to encounter. We need to create more effectively the possibility of encounter. It starts with our prayer and worship, personally and together. And our encounter with the resurrection and our being an instrument of the encounter with the resurrection is found in works of service and works of mercy, in the rest of our daily lives outside of prayer and worship. Our faith and our ability to spread the faith is found in the principles that guide us, the things we say and the things we won't say. In other words, our singing, our praying, our generosity, our witness needs to be increased, needs to be faster and more intense, if you will. We need to experience more profoundly the reality of Christ's resurrection. And to help us, God continues to make himself known. God continues to call us. God continues to speak to us through the Scriptures. God continues to speak to us through his messengers, prophets, believers. God affirms us and has not been silent. Through our encounter with divine life, then our witness grows. We make present not an imaginary world, just one that is hidden from physical sight. And the more convincing our performance, the more accessible and real the divine life becomes. Jesus Christ is risen. Indeed, he is risen. Happy Easter. For Wineskins, I'm Father Sean Conaboy.
Christ is risen, and he goes before us to await the kingdom. We are not alone. A God of power and mercy is actually involved in our lives and in our world. We are imperfect people living in an imperfect world, always striving to understand God's divine mercy and love for us through his risen Son and our Lord Jesus Christ. Wineskins is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. It is brought to you by the Annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. I'm your host, Father Jim Corda, wishing you a beautiful week, a blessed Easter Sunday, and also Easter blessings to our brothers and sisters of the Orthodox faith.